What's up, guys? This is week number 4 of our series, What to Do When You Don't Know What to Do. So we've been talking about this for a few weeks now, and I think it's been really good. Some really great things that we're talking about, especially in the time and the light of everything going on. But how many of you, like me, are big into, like, you really love a good movie? Okay, like last night I watched the Avengers. Infinity War again, which was great to check that out again and look for all the little Easter eggs that you kind of missed the first time or two. But I really love big story arcs like that. Are really enjoyable to me. And so what makes those movies great is that the producers, the writers, they all give these characters what we call backstories, where they look at the good and the bad behind them and how they've gone through everything. It kind of really helps us relate to them. And they have these weird moments. When you really start to see it, like in a movie, maybe the movie centered around a dad saving the daughter, but the backstory shows that the relationship had some issues. Or, again, a superhero defeating its greatest enemy, but you find out, Professor X and Magneto, that they used to be best friends. But then there was something that divided the relationship. Understanding the backstory helps make the story more complex, interesting, and compelling, okay? But sometimes the way that these writers introduce these are kind of random, okay? You see, like in the movie Taken, you see that the dad's chasing down the bad guys trying to get his daughter's kidnappers, when suddenly there's a flashback to a scene where he and his daughter are in the kitchen, and they're fighting or whatever. Like, what does this have to do with the chase scene? Don't break up my action scene because you didn't know what to write as a writer, okay? No, they did that on purpose. Sometimes it's a little disoriented as a viewer, especially if you're really engrossed in it. But you ask yourself, wait, what does this have to do with anything? Chances are we've kind of felt that in our own life. You're living your life, and there's moments where our real life stories that make us ask the same question. What does this have to do with anything? What happened? Why is this happening? What's happening? And what's the point of going through this? Okay, why? How did we get here? We're talking about the difficulties, the pain, the struggle, the problems, the things that become a part of our lives and a part of our backstory one day. But for right now, they're our current story, okay? When you're in the middle of them, it's rough. We can have a rough time. And again, for the past few weeks, we've been talking about this question: what to do when you don't know what to do. And today we're going to look at what to do when people make fun of you, when a friend dies, when your learning disability makes everything a lot more difficult, when your parents' divorce is killing you inside, when your self-harm habit is really getting out of control, when someone you love gets really sick. In other words, we're going to be talking about the heavy stuff, the painful stuff, the real life stuff. But before we can ask the question, what do I do? We often ask ourselves this question: why? Why is this happening to me? Why am I going through this right now? Why is this happening now? Just like the movie that flashes back to a scene that doesn't seem to make sense in the moment that it was in, difficulties can make us feel the same way. Difficulties often feel random and pointless and unnecessary. If I didn't have to deal with this, my life would be a lot better, But sometimes we see the point after the fact, when it's part of our backstory. For example, maybe you've had a broken friendship or something like that, and then you stop back and look at it and you see where that friend is, where their life is, and you saw the decisions that you were making when you were friends and realize, I didn't really need them as a friendship. Sure, in that time it wasn't fun and it was tough, but it was for the best. It's nice when that happens, but most of the time things don't feel good. When things don't feel good, that just kind of seems pointless. All right, we've all had experiences that hurt and feels pointless in the moment. Okay, whether it was not making the team or not getting the part in the play or the musical, going through drama with your family and your friends, we've all asked ourselves this question: why me? When we go through these things, and if you're like me, there's usually not many good answers in the moment. Okay, you just kind of move through. And what's worse, in real life, unlike the movies, our difficult circumstances normally don't get tied in a pretty bow and everything works out in the next hour and a half, okay? We have to continually to walk through them. The outcome may not turn out how we want it to be. It may be a little bit messy. In those times, it can be really difficult to see for us to use the point behind our pain, to see that there was a purpose behind it, to find hope despite the hurt, or to find determination to keep going through these difficulties. But we find life confusing, okay? How many of you guys are a little bit confused by life right now, okay? It's difficult. And we can actually learn what we can do by looking to people who have handled very similar situations. Which brings us back to the guy we've been talking about the past few weeks, the life of Joseph, okay? All right, Joseph, my goodness, he's been through it all. His journey, his life. Again, it's the Old Testament of the Bible, which means he lived a long time before Jesus. And here's a quick recap: Joseph was sold into slavery by his brothers. Oh, first off, he had some dreams that made his brothers mad at him. He was the favorite, which made his brothers mad at him, so they sold him into slavery. Yeah, by his brothers. Yeah, well, that's better. They were planning on killing him, but they said, no, let's make some money off of him while we're there. He was taken to a foreign country. He was taken to Egypt, where he was forced to work for a high-powered official. Yep, that's okay. Slavery is still slavery. It doesn't matter. It was a good job, but it was still slavery. He was falsely accused of rape that he didn't do, and he was thrown into prison. Things are going really well for this guy. The whole time he's still praising God and still believing in God. He went from free man to slave to prisoner. If anyone had the right to ask, what is the point? Why is all of this happening to me? It was Joseph. He had every right to ask these questions. And this is where we pick up today, okay? We pick him up in jail for a crime that he didn't commit, and here he makes some new friends. Check it out. Genesis 40, starting verse 1, it says, "Sometime later, the cupbearer and the baker of the king of Egypt offended their master, the king of Egypt. Pharaoh was angry with his two officials, the chief cupbearer and the chief baker, and put them in custody in the house of the captain of the guard, in the same prison where Joseph was confined," okay? Here's the deal. Pharaoh's the boss of all of Egypt, and if you get him mad, he can, whether you did something wrong or not, you just got him mad, he threw you in prison. He had the ability to do that. Whatever he said was law. It happened. It didn't matter, and they happened to go to the same prison with Joseph. And the story continues. After they had been in custody for some time, each of the two men, the cupbearer and the baker of the king of Egypt, who were being held in the prison, had a dream the same night. And each dream had a meaning of its own. When Joseph came to them the next morning, he saw that they were dejected. They were a little upset. So he asked Pharaoh's officials who were in custody with him in his master's house, why do you look so sad today? Okay. They answered, they both had dreams, but there was no one there to interpret them. Then Joseph said to them, "Do not interpretations belong to God? Tell me your dreams." Okay. That's a lot, but they had dreams, and they were sad because they didn't know what the dreams mean. So Joseph's like, well, God can deliver him. I know the guy. What'd you dream? But remember, a lot happening. He's in prison for a crime he didn't commit. Talking with people, really difficult situations, but Joseph continues to honor God in each one of those situations. The men told Joseph their dreams, and with God's help, Joseph told them what they meant. And then what would happen. And it happened. Based upon the dream, the chief cupbearer, the dream of the chief cupbearer had, Joseph said that he would be restored to a favorable position. And he was. As for the chief baker, Joseph didn't have the same good news for him. Didn't have the same good news. It's worth a read. Go read it. The word didn't work out as well for him. But you would think that given that Joseph had helped the cupbearer out, that he would have made sense for the cupbearer to say, "Thank you so much, Pharaoh, for bringing me back. But let me tell you about this guy Joseph. He's in your prison. He seems like a really cool dude. He interpreted a dream for me. I know you've got dreams too that you don't know what they mean. You need to get this guy on board right away." That's what you would think would happen. That would make sense for something somewhere like that to happen. That's not what happened. Nope, didn't happen at all. Not that way. The story tells us the cupbearer forgot about Joseph. He got out of jail and went on with his life. Meanwhile, Joseph is still waiting there in jail, going, okay. So he's going to tell Pharaoh what I did. And Pharaoh's going to be like, oh, dude, cool. Let me bring him. Let me at least come talk to him. All right. And Joe's like, maybe I'll at least get a good meal. I don't know. But, so he forgot. He went on with his life. Again, another point where Joseph, after a little bit, is going, dude, forgot. Why do I even bother? This isn't helping. God, why aren't you helping me? Why aren't you there? Okay. Now, that would make sense. All right. But then, 2 years later, all right? 2 years later, Pharaoh had two dreams that troubled him. And he desperately searched his staff for someone who could interpret him. And that's when, all of a sudden, the cupbearer went, oh, yeah, I got a guy. All right, hey, let me make sure he's still alive. It's been 2 years in prison. Make sure he's still good. Oh, he's still alive. Okay. And so things worked out really well. I told him what the dreams meant. Eventually, through everything, there was going to be a famine in the land. Egypt survived because of what Joseph said. Joseph's family, was saved because of that. So he protected everybody. Joseph protected everyone because of where he'd been through, and he was in the right place at the right time to interpret these dreams to protect everyone. All right. But it was 2 full years later before the cupbearer even remembered Joseph. And even when Joseph was promoted to a position of incredible power, he still was living in a foreign land. Okay? So it wasn't like Joseph's life was just perfect from that point on. He doesn't get to go home as a free man. No, nothing like that. Joseph was still under the command of Pharaoh, which meant that Pharaoh having a bad day, he's gone. So this did not make Joseph's life perfect, not even close. But when we see the big picture here, we understand the context to this backstory. We see that Joseph's challenging circumstances had uniquely positioned him to do something great. Okay, Joseph still had to wait 2 years before all these things, before all these good things would happen to Joseph. Joseph's world didn't make all these bad things go away, okay? Being promoted to second command did not undo the challenges he faced leading up to that. But at the same time, those difficult circumstances positioned him and prepared him for something great, something that only he could do because of the experiences that he had. Had he not had those experiences, he wouldn't have the position to do what he was doing. So God was using those situations to grant him some wisdom, to grant him some strength to overcome some situations that he was uniquely qualified to do because of his history, because of his backstory. All right? The same thing is true for us. Hard things happen in your life. Okay? Hard things are going to happen in your life. And it's important to remember that just because something happens doesn't mean it was something that God did to you or wanted for you. Because of sin, all right, sin happens. Things happen that aren't fair. No one ever said life's going to be fair. Didn't say it. Things are going to happen that don't make sense. People hurt each other. People hurt people, and we create a system of hurt in our lives. But when it seems like it's impossible that anything good can come out of a situation, remember, God is really good at doing the impossible. Check it out. All right. Romans 8:28 says this, and we know that in all things God works for the good of those who love him, who have been called according to his purpose. And we know that in all things God works for the good for those who love him, who have been called according to his purpose. Okay. It may not seem like things are all better. It may not even make sense yet. But God is in the business of taking our hurt, our difficulties, our pain, and redeeming them, okay? That means that even though there's been evil done, and evil was meant for evil in our lives, he can use them for good. Not only but for us, but for others. In other words, when you don't know what to do, remember that your problems can position you for a purpose. When you don't know what to do, remember that your problems can position you for a purpose. This doesn't mean that we can tie a neat bow on this and tie it all together and everything's good. It doesn't mean that everything will be fixed and go back to how it was before. It just means that we can leave room for God to tell a new story through our circumstances, through our hard situations. It means that we can have confidence in God's ability to redeem things, to know that good can come from bad. It means that bad stuff doesn't have to get the last word. The hardest and worst things we experience aren't the end of us or the end of our story. In fact, they could be the beginning of something new, something more. So, when we go through pain, we can't see, and we can't see the purpose yet. Here's some things that you can help, that we can remember to help us get through this and have a bigger perspective. One, remember that no one else has your story. Okay, no one else has your life story. Your difficult circumstances aren't fun, but they are unique to you. They put you in a position to learn, to grow, to discover things that no one else can. God is using your tough situations in ways that you can't imagine, because they have shaped you in a way that no one else has been shaped. That may not make it easier, but it may give you the perspective or a way to see it. Two, remember that your story can interact with others. All right. Big thing for us is, most of you guys know, or some of you know, the struggles that we went through with having kids. And as we're having boy number 3, we've kind of come through those. But they uniquely qualified us to talk to some people that are going through similar situations, that are struggling with things, so that we are able to share our past experiences. We may not have the same exact thing, and there may be other people who have gone through something similar, but our circumstances, our growth through those things can help us help someone else out. When you go through family drama, you can help people who are going through family drama. When you go through a hard breakup, you can understand how someone feels when they're going through their hard breakup. When you deal with a sickness or an illness or an injury, you can encourage people who are going through the same thing. When you have big doubts and begin to question your faith, you can be a safe place to talk to people who are asking those questions on their own. Okay? You can become a person who looks around and sees other people's struggles and say, "Oh, you feel that? I see what you're feeling there. I've experienced that too, or I've been there before. Or I went through something similar. Can you tell me? Can I tell you my experiences? Can I tell you what I've been through? Walk alongside them in the mess together and get through this together. All right." That's one of the reasons that we do small groups the way that we do, so that you guys have someone that you can talk to, someone that you can go to. We may not we have more experiences than you expect us to have. We've been through some stuff in our lives. We may not have gone through something just like what you're going through, but because of our past experiences, we can kind of relate in some ways that you may not be expecting. So that the way there's some open lines of communication with you guys. All right, but here's the deal. Joseph went through pain that felt pointless. But when we see his backstory, we see that God used his problem and positioned him for purpose. All right? God took his impossibly bad situation and used it to create unimaginable good down the road. All right? We'll talk more about that next week. But for now, imagine if he could do the same with you. Because he can. What if God used your painful situations to position you for something amazing that you haven't even imagined yet? And what if the first step was simply asking for his help? Asking him to show you, God, I need a glimpse to go through this, to see what you're putting me through, to see what I can go through this. God, help me to look back on some situations where I've gone through these things before, gone through some stuff before. God, put me in a position where you can use me, where you can use my circumstances. Because God's got a plan for you. Your circumstances may not have been his exact plan. I don't think God wanted COVID-19, but I know he can use it. I know that we have opportunities to reach people that we never have before. So, I don't think this is good, but I think God will do good through it. And that's what his promise is. I love you guys. Can't wait to talk to you soon.